already being in a water sign, and so on, is actually very illustrative of that particular connection. And it was very curious because I've been away for the month of December, as you know, but you know, looking over the month that I'm going to be looking at in detail from the middle of April to the middle of May, you know, as Christopher was saying just now, he took a bit of the fire out of my words in a way, because that's really a transitional term right there. I mean, that period of one lunation is fascinating. Just because Saturn and Pluto both go retrograde, they start going backwards, which means it forces us to look back to kind of analyze what really happened in this country and what happened to us. I've just been in England for a month, and by the way, the English are wondering exactly the same thing about Brexit. You know, many of the European countries are making a very similar shift in direction. And what I've noticed through doing my astrology work, the newsletters, is that it isn't necessarily that a particular person at the top of the pyramid causes this, but rather we have to look to see that in a way, I was writing these newsletters and thinking, if I could imagine a person who fulfilled those Neptunian qualities, it would be the person who is at the head of things right now. So I think we really have to look to see what is it in us that's created this reflection that people are so uncomfortable with, because it really does put the onus back on us to really change the nature of the dialogue and to really be creative. And I believe that astrology is one of the most creative vehicles which we can use to actually begin to correct what is obviously way, way, way out of balance. You know, it's funny because logically we think, you know, because astrology was originally tied to the seasons, and we think of spring and summer and autumn as being a time of the year when things flourish. But what everyone has to realize is actually the time between March and August these days is when every single planet starts going retrograde. So that the time when we start expressing our life energy, it begins pushing us backward in time and begins forcing us to really look at exactly the way you described in the video just now. You're forced at a certain point to look at the life that you created for yourself, you know, and to begin to actually find a view of the world that actually not only corrects that vision, but also provides a way forward that's a constructive and creative one. So it actually is really fascinating. I mean, both the new moon and the full moon charts in April of this year are kind of interesting because all of the planets except the node are below the horizon. So I think Christopher's actually very right about it's really a reactive period of time in 2018, where I think people are going to start to mobilize. They're going to start to, you know, things will start to arise in that collective unconscious and begin to filter into the world in a way that can be an extraordinarily powerful vehicle. And I think in a way they need us to help guide it.
So Tad, I normally have a little bit of a negative connotation with the word reactionary. And I prefer to use the word respond because I feel like that implies a little bit more of like a conscious choice to do something. Can we use those interchangeably?
Absolutely. I just mean a reaction, not reactionary in the sense of a reactionary person as a political branding.
Right.
But being reactive. It's a term in Tibetan Buddhism. Reactivity is about this way of actually responding automatically and emotionally and irrationally to things that happen.
Right.
So I mean,
so we want to respond. I mean, I think what we'd like to access is a response to what's happening.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
But I mean a response that's a much more intelligent and connected one.
Right.
And one that's connected to these kinds of qualities that we've been describing. You know, it is very much about. I mean, it's very difficult to say that it's a higher or lower nature in us that's created these things. But however, it also does make a lot of sense that higher nature, I believe, really has a whole different connection, a different resonance altogether.
Yes.
And I think